So then, maybe before we begin to talk about emptiness and going further in the discussion about emptiness, maybe it's important to kind of put a disclaimer on the discussion before. Is it better now? Yeah. So maybe before we begin to talk about emptiness and go further in the discussion of emptiness, then it's kind of important at this point to put a disclaimer on the discussions, in the sense that when we're talking about emptiness, then it is not something that is easily understood at the first go. Even the person who begins to talk about emptiness doesn't find it an easy task. And then someone who wants to get at the meaning of emptiness would face the same problem. It is a little a topic that is particularly difficult to approach in the first go. And now, when we're talking about emptiness in the Buddhist philosophy, then even in the Buddhist traditions, there are many different schools of philosophy which posit their own ideas of emptiness. There are schools such as the Chittamatra school, the mind-only school, which begins to say that everything is just an appearance in the mind and nothing really exists. And then there's the middle way school, the Madhyamika school, which begins to posit. Now it's closer to our discussion on emptiness, wherein it begins to posit that emptiness is that things are not established through their own powers, or things are not established inherently, but it exists only as mental imputations drawn on the conceptual thoughts. So there are many different assertions and interpretations of emptiness even within the Buddhist philosophical schools. Yes. So then, referring back to our discussion about the two extremes, then we can kind of gauge the importance of coming to a true understanding of emptiness when we look at our immediate reaction when we hear that things are empty of true existence, or things are empty of being truly established. Then we begin to think that maybe nothing exists. Does it mean, that's the first question we have, then nothing exists? So this is one of the extremes, and this is not a correct understanding of emptiness, wherein we begin to say that nothing exists. And then when we look at the way that we relate to phenomena or objects in the way that we normally do, then we hold objects and phenomena to be truly established, in the sense that we think that these objects appear to us, or we perceive them to be absolute objects that do not really depend on many interrelations of causes and conditions. They appear as absolute objects to us. So this is the other extreme. So emptiness is that middle ground between these two kind of extremes of objectivity. just it being being us talking about emptiness, I want to hear from you as a group. Like, what do you understand by emptiness, and what is your idea of emptiness?
Shall I give it a shot?
Yeah, 답시 지켜봤어.
It's pure potential. Potential of all possibilities unrealized. But when realized, it's what we are experiencing. And it's basically it's got to do what makes it ironic is that it's both the beginning and the end, and that it's what everything arises from and ends up into.
Can you repeat that part?
It's got the characteristic of being both the start and the end. Right, so things arise and disintegrate into it. Arise from it and disintegrate into it. Yeah, in a few words.
오케이. tani Quran gi lamna ra ani tongba ni la vetida tongba ni gi shirap la na tongba ni la jura dekona ni la tida nyoba chimbu shiuji todos tongba ani kaina ta kisi de da shirap chi tongna ani kare ni chetoya kare na yonsi wala chi ni nyoba chimbu todos ani ta chikchena tongba ni la di yamsen go peresra cheba gi godiyan tini zuberesra jukdiyan thara resra 죽당 고니자 다라레스 카인라나 아니 지외 값수 뭐고 있나래 추가래 있나스라 추 지외 값수 다가라는 지주기가 왔어 지마타도 지게 보주기가 왔어 라 지마타도 지게 보주돼서 뭐 다가라는 게 동반이 이게 차지되면도 왔어 지마타도 지주기가 왔어 제자니 제바치 얘기 고야 다가라는 레스라 제바치 얘기 주기가 다가라는 레스
Just a simple exercise of trying to describe emptiness brings a falsehood. You cannot truthfully describe emptiness because the linguistic process of describing something so infinite makes it finite, and therefore the description will be invalid. It's something that
this is not the case, I think, but okay.
Yeah, but it's just my understanding, okay. Right? It's something that linguistics, our tool of linguistics is too limited to.
Maybe when we're talking about the experience of that direct realization, then maybe language is not enough.
Exactly, you have to experience it, not talk about it.
But right now we are talking about a philosophical understanding of emptiness, a more epistemological understanding of emptiness. 단단한서 기지시에 디 코일 없나요라 기지시는 동반이 냠수 똑바래줘라 디다 시기 파지시 자토해지요 말했다 동반이 용화줘라 동반이 무슨 똑바기 용화줘라 디다 배치비지 시기다 디시 자토해요 말했어 벳 기획을 대봐 기획이 디시 자마토해 냠주지레스 디다 인식을 해래라 또 있는 단단한서 기 동반이라 디 생각이 쉬는 거지 동반이를 고아지려고 와서 두타기 슝라다는 동반이를 고아지려고 봤어. 그래서 동반이면서 네 동반이 완전히 지시기로 봤어. Yes. Others, yes.
My understanding of emptiness is that everything is empty of objective existence, which means that everything is there are causes and conditions that create every object, and everything is also perceived differently. So let's say, take an easy thing. The pen, for example, exists conceptually. In the conventional world, we can all agree that this is a pen, but this pen is a result of causes and conditions that brought this pen to exist, and it doesn't exist exist from its own point. And I would say for me, for example, so there is no ultimate lital that exists.
Ultimate?
Lital, my name.
Okay.
Lital. There is no ultimate to me. I'm a result of causes and conditions. I'm a result of many, many things. The way I grew up, my ancestors, my past life, and whatever, what I eat, what my environment, and so on. And also every person that getting into interaction with me will perceive me in a different way as well. This is why, for me, emptiness, it's not that I don't exist. I exist in the conventional world, but in the ultimate world, there is no one ultimate me.
We would not use the word ultimate world and conventional world.
That's what I learned from getting
conventionally or ultimately.
Okay. Conventional reality?
Yeah. No. Yeah, okay, we can even use that word.
Sorry, yes, not world.
Because then it looks like these are two different worlds.
Sure.
이 프랑길람나 동만이를 컨데질라는 지치기라는 방법스라 유지문에 맞고 뭐고 가래 있나 최 가래 있는 유지문에 맞고 알아주라. 워틸라 아니 지치기스 동만이 배나 샤샤나는 아주 그 뉴구로 지를 샤나스라. 아니 근접라도 뉴구 요를 알죠. 이나 된당발은 뉴구 파체가 드나스라. 뉴구 먼저기 뒤다기 로나 차데 뉴구디 요마스. 배나 샤샤 뉴구디 유지문에 맞고라야지 유크랑이 문에 주진 찔러야 맞는데라 아니 쿠랑 라면에 두고라야죠 디요 말레스 다라라기 유는 맞고라야죠 유지문에 맞고라야지 아니 가져나는 주제 뭐지다 아니 바토보이 안들 뉴고레라니 민치다 그래서 지난시 뉴고디 미드가스나 되나스라 근접진 뭐라 미참이 뉴고레라니 민치겨라 봤습니다 이나 뉴고디라 낭술디 미르르라 와라 완동기로스 지사 이이문에 두비는 미강가를 찍나고스 딘낭게 말았어 미강의 찍도 도요 말았어 어디 이 동반이래 되지 지시스 대단진이니 코랑밀라 리달레다 아니 리달 근접기 모라샤나 리달 레지요스라 이 된담발라니 리달 레지 제가 도는 리달 레지 니죠 가인은 리달 레지 밍레스라 리달 레기다 근접라 모를 샤주 리달 틱자가 도나스라 아니 주제 뭐지라 아니 또 스님마기 제와라 라데 타나밀 토바 파마라 텐 리디 토바 아니 로바로마 뭐지 때는 소소미 곰실라 슈진테바 리달라나 mambo 주제 mambo 나서 버지라 때는 신이 리달 레기 뭐지 도베스 제가 유라님은 리달라네 두주지 말았어 제가 공만이는 리달로 있어 Yes, sir. Anyone else want to give it a go? So then this is a very good starting ground wherein when you begin to say that emptiness is that understanding that things do not exist objectively. And when we say that things do not exist objectively, then it comes from a place of investigation to make this statement that things do not exist objectively. So maybe rather than coming to that conclusion first, then we need to understand what did we take for granted when we did not begin this investigation. How did we relate to things? How did we think of things when we didn't analyze it? So when things appear as absolute things, established from the object side itself, not independent on causes and conditions. We think that the nature, the entity of objects are established truly from the object side, solely from the object side. Then everything appears very absolute, concrete to us. And then our conceptions of objects and all derive from this kind of unanalyzed conception. Now when you begin to analyze, then we look at where is this thing that we call a mic or something. Then when you begin to analyze, then things we realize are made of different parts, particles, and then things, in order for these parts and particles to come together, there are very different causes and conditions. So when you begin to analyze, like, where is this thing that we thought like it exists so objectively or exists so concretely from the object side, then we find that referent the name that we put on things, when you begin to begin to look for it, then we really cannot find it. So this is the understanding that things are not things do not exist objectively. Yes. So with this understanding, now we can begin to explore with different examples. For example, we hold a book in our hand, and then in English it's called a book. In Hindi it's called a kitab. In Tibetan we call it a tep, and in Chinese you call it a different thing. So then the term itself, we realize, comes from the mind itself. It begins to designate things, right? It's a name, it's a designation that the mind imputes onto the object. And now, so if things exist objectively from the object's own side, if things are truly established in that manner, then we should be able to find that designation in the object itself. That referent we should be able to find in the object itself. So when we look at the book, where is that book? Is it the front cover? Is it this first page? Is it the last page? But when you go on to look for this thing that we call book, then it does not really exist so concretely or absolutely as we think it does from the object side. So you can extend this kind of investigation to all things on which we put names, and then we associate that name with the object itself. So this is maybe a very basic understanding of emptiness. So then, if things exist objectively, then each page of the book should be called a book. We should be able to find a book in each page. And like that, in the classical discussions about emptiness, then we use the example of a wheel in a cart. So when you use that example, then what we call wheel should exist in all the part and particles of that wheel. But when you break the wheel down, then each strand of wheel, each of these parts does not begin, is not the wheel. We find that, and then some say that it is a congregation or a collection of these parts that makes the wheel. If that is so, then the parts themselves should have part of the wheel in it. But this is not the case. Yes. So then, with this understanding, now we can begin to think about how human beings kind of develop their sense of identity. And herein, this is very important to kind of, this is very important when we say that things or phenomena do not exist objectively, then how do they exist? Then we say they exist as mere imputations, mere designations created by the conceptual thought, which begins to superimpose this existence onto the object. So this is evident in the way that human beings relate to being called their names, or when we say that we saw someone, and sometimes we just see only their head from the window, then we say like we saw someone, even though like if that only that head part is not that person. But sometimes the way we relate is like that we saw that person when we see only the head part of the person from a window. So this is important to realize how like human beings relate to their conceptions of identity. Yes. So this is the manner in which the mind begins to impute these designations onto the object. For example, when we are in that greeting procession for His Holiness the Dalai Lama when he travels from here to the airport, even though we do not see the whole person of the Dalai Lama, the whole body of the Dalai Lama, when we see him through the car window, then we begin to say that I had a really good view of the Dalai Lama, even though we see only parts of the Dalai Lama. So then this way that the mind begins to impute existence or designations onto objects is a basic is a must to kind of get at a true understanding of emptiness. Because now we can explore this through this example. When a child is born, then if he or she is not named, then like you do not refer to them by any name. So as a person, we kind of associate our identity or who we are or the person of who we are with the name itself. So let's say there is someone called Ria, and when Ria was born, she didn't identify with this name. Nobody identified Ria with that name. But it's only from the moment when Ria was given that name that people, like one or two of her cousins, relatives, began to identify Ria with that name. And then Ria herself learns to identify her with that name. And And then she continues with this process of identification until the moment she passes away from this world, when she is no longer real. So that's the way in which the mind begins to impute designations, and then the mind has wrong conceptions about this designation being the objective truth itself. So this is a must to understand emptiness. Yes. So then, this is not to say that this is the correct interpretation of emptiness, or this is the final say on emptiness, because it's a constant process of investigation, and you need to start that process of investigation yourself. And now, at the subtlest level, on a personal basis, we need to look at how we relate to this conception of I. When you say I, me, myself, and then when you come here now, like you are at a very subtle level of investigation, wherein now same I, we should look at it as an imputation, designated imputation. And now when you begin to say that I, but look at the way that you relate to this I. And sometimes when our head hurts, you say that, oh, I'm not feeling well, equating the head which hurts through your whole being. And so this is the many different ways in we have like confusion with regards to how to relate to this conception of I that I have. Yes. So sometimes we feel like when our head hurts, we say that, oh, I'm not feeling well. Now the opposite is true, sometimes too, wherein sometimes we kind of think of a separate I, which is not related to our body parts, our head, and so forth. We think of this I as somehow exercising a sense of control over all our body parts. So then it is at this point important to understand that when we say that things are not truly established, or things do not exist objectively, then it does not mean that then nothing exists. It means that things do not exist as we perceive them to be, in a way wherein we perceive things as being truly established, in the sense that from the object side itself, it arises without depending on causes and conditions, without depending on this process of imputation from the conceptual thought. So this is very important. So by understanding the first statement that things do not exist objectively, we begin to cut the extreme of absolutism. And now when we say then how do they exist, then it exists as mere designations, or mere terms that the conceptual thought imputes onto the object. Then we begin to cut the extreme of nihilism. Yes. So then, yes, emptiness is particularly difficult to comprehend in the first go. And there's a funny story which kind of serves to make this point. There was a person who was trying to come to a realization of emptiness. And then someone asked him, have you come to such a realization now? And then he said confidently, yes, indeed, I have come to a realization of emptiness. And then the person asked, what does it look like? And then he answered, it appears to be a blue patch. Emptiness appears like a blue patch. So herein we realize that it's not something that we can easily understand. And this is said in jest, of course. So then moving on with the text itself, the verse 40, the space-like emptiness of meditative equipoise and the illusion-like emptiness of the subsequent realizations. So now herein we are talking about when you begin to realize this wisdom of emptiness in your meditation, then you begin to achieve meditative equipoise. You become totally absorbed in that meditation, in that session. And so when you meditate on emptiness in that meditative equipoise, then that emptiness is like space-like. Its quality is like space-like. And then as you realize emptiness in that meditative equipoise, then there is a moment when you come out of that session. And then come out of that session, and then you face apparent reality. So then apparent reality, and then that moment, then the subsequent realizations. Now the way that someone who has realized emptiness and the way he engages the apparent reality is exactly this, the subsequent realizations, is compared to illusion-like emptiness. Now when we use the example illusion, then it's important to stress the term illusion-like. It does not say illusion emptiness, it says illusion-like emptiness. And the subsequent realizations are when faced with apparent or conventional reality itself, then emptiness, we realize that things are like illusions. So this is what it means. And now when we look at that analogy, that illusion-like, so if we see an illusion that is being performed by a magician, and then there are times when we know that there are illusions, even though they kind of deceive our eyes. But sometimes there are moments wherein, like even when we forget that there are illusions being performed by a magician. So this is very important to remember.
I'm just trying to understand, wrap my head around this concept. I just want to make sure before we continue.
Okay.
So the definition of emptiness in this case is first described as how we perceive objects in its absolute form, but in reality they're really a summation of many different basically summarizing the sum of its parts. And then once you start peeling the layers, they're different. They're different entities. I am this individual, but I'm a piece of hair, I'm a piece of skin, and I'm not really this formation of different parts. Now, when we're looking at this text, where we say the space-like emptiness of meditative equipoise, the space-like emptiness, when we're talking about these absolute objects and saying that, I'm not understanding how we're calling that emptiness, but more of how we perceive illusions. That's kind of one point that I'm struggling to grasp right now is why we
Which one? The space-like emptiness of meditative equipoise?
Yes, and also the way we perceive things that are truly illusions based on this analysis, right? Why are we calling that emptiness, whereas it's just a delusion?
So, deny lenjana digra. Okay. So, yes.
Right, like when you look at me and you say that this is me, it's really
It's
a
an illusion in life, it's not an illusion.
Okay.
There's a difference, but
So, the point that's being made in these two lines is exactly that. So, when you are meditating, most of the time your eyes are closed. Okay, first, and then apparent reality does not appear because your eyes are closed, your senses are not really engaging. Right? They are dormant in that sense. It's totally concentrated on that wisdom of emptiness. So there, the conventional reality does not appear. Things do not appear. Right? Right? So when you get up from that meditative equipoise, from that session, and open your eyes, you see things. Okay? So what's the difference? Okay? Normally when we meditate and when we get up, and what's the difference between someone who meditates on emptiness and realizes emptiness and gets absorbed in that meditative equipoise, and then when he gets up and wakes up and looks at apparent reality, what's the difference? That's the question. Right?
It's just the senses, right? When
Exactly.
The senses are activated.
Okay. So, 일단 나저 나와 유지한 신범에를 리더 타마나. 라. 냠샤가 좀 나와 내 개요 말아. 지통한다 고해도요 말아. 아니
하와이, 야적은 하와이니까 신바에
아니 야다 냠샤는 야 나와 있는 데서 봐라. 아니 지탁도 이값 좀 봐서라. 나와 열어. 예, 잠이 통거라. 이나야 신바요 말아. 주마다 불렀다 이라. 그럼 신바요 말아. So in meditative equipoise, aim towards realizing emptiness, or like actually realizing emptiness, then there is no appearance of phenomena, and there is no conception of phenomena, because you solely focus on emptiness. And now when you get up from that meditative equipoise, then you are face to face with like these apparent phenomena, apparent reality. So things appear, but the person who has realized emptiness has no conception of things as we normally do. Because that's why they appear like illusions. So for example, like you get fooled once by a magician's trick. Then at that first moment, like you think, wow, something really amazing happened, you're fooled. And then when you realize these are the tricks, next time, even when you begin to do that, you do not have that same sense of wonder or attachment. So it's like that.
You're not bought into the illusion as a reality.
Exactly.
딜레이를 추르는 거잖아. 싫어 따니 그거 보고 뒤 싫어 따니 거잖아. 인간은 나는 하시니까 하와는 하고 아따라 치르지. 그거도 하시니까 아니 그러니까 근데 유튜버 보면 하와이에 근데 시바요. 그러니까 하와이에
진성이
하시니까 매일 그렇지 하와이.
나와도 이거야. 주고
하시니까 매일
나신가 민이 영샤가 없습니다.
근데 제가 듣기 싫다.
아,
나시거든 난 나시거든 난 양자가 무슨 하시니까 그래서 저기서 하와이에 시바요. 그러나 저도 하시니까
이어르다. 나와요, 시바요.
다 빼가는 샤워도 되다. 빼가는 샤워도 추르인데 하시니까
이어르.
하재기 미세 봐도 많이 보입니다. 하재기 미 많이 봐도 하시니까 다 유튜브 보라고.
저거보다 나와요.
하와이는
시바요.
어디 계신가?
디딕서. 파르만트는 배송 더라는 시간. 건설하고.
남자 하와이에만 시바요. 야자를 주는 하와이로 야자 거 시샤고가 나다 하시니까 미들가 하재기 미 많이 와서 때문에 거라고 매직이 충만히 문제다. 그런 하와이 시바요. 같이 통과마다 하와이 시바요. 이샤. 다 야자를 주요한 거는 나와도 하와이를 시바요. 일단은 주고 그거를 나 그런 거 책이 있어요. 이내 그런 게 문제 많이 있고 그래 아니 시바요. 그러니까 하기디 나와요. 시바요. 그러니까 안주기 때문에 나는 최근 대만 하루에 시바요. 어디 계시죠?
니 진짜 로종 된두만 안 가. 니 퇴점 주매지 오지 않았습니다. 뒤에 더 하는 거야. 퇴점 주매지 오지 않았지. 그래서 so yes, now we can begin to understand the point that is being made in the 14th verse about what it really means, this realization of emptiness. So let's say there is an illusionist and there is an audience, and so when there is an illusionist, there is an audience, then the illusionist himself knows that if he conjures, like, let's say, an image of a dog, the illusion of a dog in front of the audience, then the illusionist himself, does this dog appear to the illusionist? Yes, it does. But does the illusionist himself has a conception that this is a real dog? No. And then the audience, does the dog appear to the audience? Do the audience think that this is a dog? Yes. So this is our normal way of relating to reality, wherein when we things take as they appear to us, we think that things exist as they appear to us. And now the illusionist is like a person getting up from that meditative equipoise wherein he realized emptiness. So even though things appear to him, he knows that they do not exist as they appear. So he has no wrong conceptions. He does not take illusion to be reality. So he realizes the illusion-like quality of reality.
When you say that everything is just an illusion, nothing exists, would you say that this is nihilism?
Yes, not exactly. No, when we 지양 요마를 이렇게 주시기도 해요. 정말 주말을 해야죠. 정말 주말에 지양 요마를 이렇게 저를 파블릭으로 해서. 출루가는 양들이 또
맞아. 다시 집에 전화오다. 아까 마치고 전에 유럽에. 저 취지에 밀려는 잘 도와. 이나 유럽 맞지 뒤에 계시시 저한테 무슨 도와돼. 이내 아까 다시 제도는 어머니 어디 요마를 나와. 어머니 요마를 엄청 매주셔. 내가 게디 나 샤야. 나도 깔리지 고야. 처음에 외쳐. 되게 말이야. 되게 나 샤기 도면 같이 되게
this is very important not to kind of jump to that conclusion of saying that, okay, then everything is an illusion, so nothing exists. This is not the point that is being made here. It stresses the word illusion-like. And now when we say illusion-like, then we need to understand that when we think of, let's say, ourselves, like oneself as Wangmo, then we think that Wangmo is truly existent. Wangmo, we equate Wangmo with our being. And then we think that Wangmo is this absolute being who begins to engage in these things. But such a Wangmo does not exist when you begin to investigate. Then does nothing exist? Then what you do, what you practice, doesn't all of this have a consequence? The way that we think we do exist, that's not true. We exist, but it dependence on so many causes and conditions. Our own concrete ideas and absolute ideas about who we are, that does not exist. That's the point that's being made.
So the difference between just an illusion is that exists nihilism and like an illusion is that enjoyed by depending on causes, conditions, states, and imitation.
So yes, that the 지혜의 영화를 딱 먼저 카시나라야 디시기다. 주마, 감제 주마레 라이다. 주마 따부래 디샤인더스. 이 디샤인더스 뭐 주마레 라민디다. 주마 따부 말람 네스라. 주마레 람나 다 체다로 지샤기도스. 아니 드레스 코알이나 디.
never to be mother magic is
So even in the context of saying that everything is just an illusion, then we are talking about it being an illusion in terms of not being truly established. This we need to understand.
What do you mean by not being truly established?
From object side itself, existing as it appears.
제가 이제 돈이 자체를 타고 와.
또 건조기 뒤가 동부디 대말 모두 발해줘라. 디 그런 갈라요스.
근데 그지다. 근데 지파가 저 자가 되는 그 말을 제가 디는 나수 대바스 트레지 비. 라. 많이 받지는 저 내지가 빠져. 그거에 말을 다시 되게 빠져.
So truly established simply means that if things exist as they appear, then when we go on to find these things in the object itself, then it should exist from the object side itself. Since does not exist from the object side, then it's not truly established.
근데 그런 게 신문을 주의하다가 나도 나도 아마 지문들이 얘기 가만히 있는데 해 상황에서 나도 제시하는데 나도 들려요. 아까 파트 계속 지나서 민다를 따기로 한 신이 있다. 가서이 시지를 같이 따네. 맞지
So then maybe if I give this example, it becomes clear. So when we say things are not truly established, then let's say Dawa Doma. And so if Dawa Doma is truly established, then from the moment of birth itself, everyone should refer to that baby as Dawa Doma, because the Dawa Doma should be established from the birth itself. But this is not the case. So the baby is referred to as Dawa Doma only after it's named Dawa Doma. And it's named, mind begins to name that as Dawa Doma.
So it's illusion-like because Dawa Doma exists in its
Just as a term.
Just as a term, so that's
Exactly.
what makes it illusion-like.
Yes.
And it's simply an illusion because it's
Not an illusion-like.
Sure. But the reason why we're using the term illusion is because it's also not established.
Exactly.
We're using the term like because that label exists.
아니 주마따보다 주마레라 인치가
단 니케 친구 레일 하게요 나이. 건조 연 주마 레일 남는 남성 파치하다기 처럼 풍는다.
주마따보 로지레라 오라. 다른 거 레라 보지.
Now the danger of the danger of saying everything is an illusion
Sure.
is okay. This is a funny story, like to kind of stress the importance of saying it is illusion, saying like illusion like. So let's say someone who practices meditation and who says that now I've come to an understanding of emptiness, and then says everything is just an illusion. Okay? And then someone comes in front of that person and grabs a stick. See, if everything is just an illusion, then bear through this. And starts to hit him, then what will be the case? He will begin to feel pain on all that. So it's not just, this is the point that is being made. There is that experience of pain, all aspects of experience that we still experience, right? So illusion, saying everything is just an illusion negates that. So it's important to use illusion like. tanda di lagi rana so but samje ni juma milam tabu yin lamna sara tini dinde lamni miji tunas ani ko gomja de man go gana juba ji shuna tamje juma ra wasta ko nyoma ji yo mara naya do
Just one more clarification.
yes
Okay, excellent.
yeah chiotina digiras
So, when we're using the term emptiness to describe the way we process these illusions,
not the process. Emptiness is the nature of reality itself.
correct? But when we were, you see that when I read this line here, the space-like emptiness of meditative state, what I understand from this then is that the state of this emptiness, this experience of emptiness comes from the cessation of your senses, where you're not able to, when you're not grasping anything that creates an illusion,
That
where you're
is
experiencing the nothingness.
so.
That is emptiness then.
So now herein is the problem. When we think of senses, then we kind of think senses as being separate from the mind itself. But this is not true. Without the consciousness, then the senses are rendered inert. No?
Right.
No? tanda 간속이 삼는 동네에서 뭐 된다는다. tanda 간속이 냠셔가 없으면 바니 tanda 디나 라브라. 냠셔 남가다 볼 동이 디 삼는 있는 뭐 니 냠셔가 없으면 바니 왕고로 줘라. 왕 동반이 또 고연나스라다. 왕고상 고가고 해버리지. 디 말아. 가자는 기즈 왕고상 고가고 해놨으라. 간속이 왕고래 되던 셰발래 되던 로가로 지라다기다. 왕복이 누가 랑시기 누가 있지?
이게 그 거라.
그래.
공유하게 나도 누가 이게 그 거라. 가서 그거가 내가 찌쳐보다 이거 내가 또 순전히 줘야 돼요. 뭐가 공유 백 zuda tero 하는 이 그거 같이 하고. 이제 시에는 나시지. 이거는 너무 좋아지잖아.
Okay, so then if a realization of emptiness in your meditative pursuit means a cessation of the senses, then when you're sleeping, your senses are dormant. So you should come at one point at a realization of emptiness, but this is not the case.
So the awake consciousness.
So we should not think of consciousness as one isolated, abstract thing. Consciousness, mind is always an active instance of cognition, active instance of the mind being engaged. So it is very difficult and almost impossible for someone to say this is the correct understanding of emptiness. It's a constant process of investigation, so you should not take this as a decisive authoritative like understanding of emptiness. It's a constant process of investigation. But now we need to first have the basis upon which we can begin this investigation, wherein we get a better understanding of how this process of investigation should begin. And so then when we relate it to our own experiences, when we begin to think about how we identify things or people in general. Now before moving on to things, we should like look at the way we kind of relate to people. Then we relate to people with their names. The first process of identification is their names. And then when we think of people, we think of people in terms of name. We equate that person with the name itself, right? So in that process, in that process, we begin to think that the person is the name itself. In between, the person is the name themselves. So if that is the case, then we begin to say that Dolma, Tashi, Michael, Sarah, so on and so forth. And we do not think that these are names. We just think of them as beings. We equate them with the human beings themselves. So in that process, there is a wrong conception there first. And then in that process, what happens is we think that these human beings, these people, when we begin to equate them with the name itself, we think that just as the name, like at one moment of like imputing it, it just arises. Then that person is also, we looked at with the being of that person as something similar to that. That this is a person, concrete, absolute thing, not dependent upon causes and conditions. So in that manner, we can begin the process of investigation into what really is emptiness. So the rest of the questions we'll pick it up in the question and answer sessions. Yes. And we break for tea now. I think emptiness has given you a headache at this point.